Hello, Facebook. You don't have to look at me for too much longer because I'm gonna bring on woo
Hey!
the real hero of the story today, Xander. Um, this is like the third time in 24 hours that these poor people on Facebook have had to endure my face. So, not too much longer, I promise.
You mean honor. You
Yes,
mean honor, that they
that's
have
the,
the honor.
that's the word that I was looking for.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Well, you guys are here. We're out of the food ed page tonight because we are building a solid foundation for opening a restaurant. And food is always my favorite topic, and restaurants are my favorite businesses. So I'm always interested to see the types of people we get coming through these classes and what kind of lovely delicacies they're going to bring to the Kansas City area because I eat frequently. Like a lot of people put on like the COVID-19 and I put on the COVID like 30. So um
I'm in that position myself,
yeah,
but I have no regrets because there's been some really good new food. So
and it's like isn't it, it's restaurant week
that
now.
is right. That is
So
right.
that's actually it's Wednesday, so I need to catch up on my indulgences. So yeah, maybe I'll like DoorDash something while Xander's teaching this class and have a late dinner.
I
So
might also dropping off some food.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, just jump in the private chat and let me know what you want, and I'll just make sure you get fed tonight. Yeah, so I've small talked enough for that, but I will, Xander's got a lot to say tonight, and so we're gonna let him jump right into it. But do me a favor, everybody that's watching right now, introduce yourself in the comments. Let us know like what kind of stuff you like to cook. If you're gonna open a restaurant, a food truck, if you have a food product, whatever that is, let us know. We want to help. And then, of course, throughout the class, if you have questions, make sure to drop those in the comments. I'm gonna be like in the background pushing buttons and make sure that Xander is able to see those questions and he can answer those for you. And then, of course, if we don't get to it in the middle of the class, we'll make sure that we have a Q&A portion there at the end. And if there aren't any questions, then Xander and I will just, chit chat at the end of the class.
enjoy the food that we ordered.
Always. All right. Well, I'm going to bring your presentation up, Xander, and I will let you take it away, sir.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. I want to thank Hannah, my producer, for making me look good here. Hi, my name is Xander Winkel. I am the director of the Innovation Center Business Incubator. Like we said, tonight we are talking about setting up all the things for a successful restaurant business plan. So first off, I got to thank Macon Public Library for putting this on. I got to thank the Kauffman Foundation for funding these programs. And I want to thank you, folks in the audience, for taking some time hanging out here. Like we had talked about, please, I am hungry for your questions. That tells me, then I know I'm giving you the information that you are wanting from this program. So let's jump into it. So, like we said, I want to know who you are out there. So tell me what your idea is, or maybe if you are just starting up with a restaurant, what restaurant it is. And I want to know what is something specifically that you came to this class and you're like, I want Xander to answer this. Please let me know, and I will do my absolute best to make sure that you get that information that you want. So tonight, we are going to ask some tough questions. We really want to, in the early stage, dissect your plan and identify, are there any gaps? Are there any things that we didn't think about early on? We don't want those surprises halfway through the process when you've spent money, you spent so much time. We want to have all of this planned out as best as possible before you get launched into this process. So, and who am I? Director at the Innovation Center. So the reason I'm here tonight is this is something that I do on a regular basis. Part of my job is food businesses come to me every day with an idea, but maybe they don't have that business experience. So I help them put together that roadmap of these are the steps that you're going to have to take. These are the considerations that you need to be thinking about to successfully get started with your idea. Let's do a quick overview of all the topics that we're going to go over tonight. We're going to start off with you. We're going to talk about your customers. We're going to talk about the business concept. We're, of course, going to talk about the location in the menu. We're going to dive in a little bit into the financial considerations for starting a restaurant, talk a little bit about the legal permits, some of those that are likely going to apply to just about any restaurant wherever you're going. Going to talk about some ideas around restaurant marketing, talk a little bit about operations and systems of actually running the restaurant. And of course, we're going to talk about human resources. So the folks that you will be hiring to keep the restaurant rolling. All right, so I said we're going to have some tough questions. So this is one where you really got to be honest with yourself. Is restauranting for you? And I'll tell you right now, I love to cook. I make a really good steak, if I do say so myself. So I do get questions from folks because I work with a lot of food businesses and restaurants. I'll get folks and my friends will say, Xander, when are you opening up your restaurant? And we just for funsies, we've talked about some different ideas. And if I did open a restaurant, what would it be? But here's the thing. I know that running a restaurant is not for me. I've worked in restaurants. I've managed restaurants. It is a lot of time. It is stressful. The schedules are weird. Like you're working those weekends and holidays that you might otherwise be spending with your family or friends. And it's not for me. I know personally that what I truly enjoy is helping use my knowledge to help other folks who absolutely are going to open up their restaurant. And the other thing too is I'll be honest, the number one reason why a food business that I've worked with will close isn't that it's not the food. It's not necessarily the business plan. The number one reason is that that owner realizes that it's not for them. They get into it and they're like, this is a lot of work. This is, there are things, I didn't really think about the fact that I will have to be managing a whole team of cooks and servers, or I didn't realize that I'm hanging out in the restaurant until, 1 a.m., wrapping everything up. I just didn't really, think a lot about how that would affect my life. So it's really just personal reasons for the owner. That's the number one reason for those early stage food businesses. Hannah's saying she is very much about eating the food, but not about making the food. And then Mariah, or my name is Tanner, and your wife, and looking to open up a sub shop in Centralia, Missouri. That's awesome. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. So yeah, being really honest with yourself. And this is the part too, when we do this class in person, I will ask the audience to raise their hand who has worked in the restaurant business before. So definitely, if you have not had a lot of firsthand experience working in a restaurant, now's definitely the time to, go figure out a restaurant that might make sense. And they are needing help. There is definitely a shortage of humans to work in restaurants right now. So what that means is you have a lot of opportunities to connect with and maybe get some hands-on experience with all the things that it takes to run a restaurant. And I've seen instances too where some of the businesses that are thinking about opening up a restaurant will work with another restaurant and tell them, say, hey, I eventually want to open up my own restaurant. Can you help and be willing to share? And a lot of times you can find somebody who's more than happy to take, a good employee, because they know if you're thinking about opening up your own restaurant, you're going to be a good employee for them while you were there, and share that experience. So if you haven't had a lot of that experience with the different components, front of the house, back of the house, the administration of running a restaurant, now's definitely the time to connect, and maybe work with a restaurant owner who's willing to share some of that expertise. Ganesha, thanks so much with Blissful Soul Kitchen, food service business, for joining us. Excellent. So you also need to figure out, how much time can I commit to this? Running a restaurant is not a part-time gig. You are on the clock. All of that restaurant's open, you are on the clock. So really being honest about how much time that you can commit to it and how much money you can put into it. Here's the honest truth is, if you are a startup food business, it is highly unlikely that you will get, lent all the money that you would need to start up that operation. So either you are saving and investing yourself, or you're bootstrapping it. Maybe you're starting off as a pop-up. Maybe you're starting off as a caterer, maybe a food cart or truck, that you can build up to getting into a restaurant. So being honest about how much financially you can put into this. And then realizing, what is it really going to take all in to get this thing going? And do I have, like I was saying, one of the number one reasons that our small food businesses get out of the food business is it's just not for them. So making sure that you've got the bandwidth and the energy for successfully running a restaurant. And a lot of that, again, you can figure out by connecting with those folks who are running restaurants and getting that firsthand experience if you haven't already. And like I was saying, with my lifestyle of, I'm not a night owl. So working the dinner shift until midnight, it's not for me. I love spending the holidays and weekends with friends and family. It's not the lifestyle that I want. But I'm honest with myself. So I definitely want to make sure everybody else thinks of all those personal considerations first. All right, that's enough about you, enough about me. Let's talk about probably the most important humans in this discussion. That is your customers. That is who is paying you money. That is who is going to keep the operation going once you open it up. I think there is absolutely a temptation for a lot of business owners to think about their business as, this is my creation, this is my baby, this is my project, and it's about me. And unless you have a lot of money to burn on that project, it is not. It is about the customers that you are serving, the people who are giving you money to keep that business rolling. So you need to know as much about those people as you can, because that is going to inform a lot of your business decisions, from picking a location to the decor to the menu to how you are marketing. All of these things will be determined, and you need to be thinking about and having as much information as you can about your target market. This is, and I'll ask this question to some of our business owners, and I'll say, hey, who, have you defined your target market? And sometimes I'll get the answer, my target market is everybody. Everybody can eat my food. Yes, everybody can potentially be a customer and eat your food, but you need to know, and the whole point of identifying a target market is that you can then develop a strategy and get information and figure out who is the most likely folks to be eating at your restaurant. What are the demographics, so you can make those more tailored business decisions. And you can, tailor your marketing, because you can't market to everybody successfully. You can't just put out, TV ads on every station or even be on every single social media platform that exists. You need to figure out who is the most likely, who is going to be returning to your restaurant on a regular basis, who's the most excited. And then you can tailor and focus your energy on those individuals who are the most excited about your concept and about your restaurant. So yeah, thinking about what is important to them, and then how do you connect with them? Whether you're connecting on a social media platform, whether you've got your specific focus groups, or maybe you're starting off as a pop-up just to get some of that information. And then also, this is where I'll throw out, Macon Public Library pays to subscribe to a lot of demographic and industry reports. So that is a great resource that for the low price of having a library card, you can get access to those databases and get that information. And that's a tool that large restaurants utilize. When they're looking at, is a particular location a good one for them? They look at that demographic information because they know who their target market is, and they'll know that they need to have a certain concentration of their target market in a certain drive area. So they've got this formula that they utilize before they make these decisions, because they really know who is the most likely to regularly spend money at their restaurant, who's really excited about their concept. So there's no reason that you also can't, there's no need to completely guess and completely gamble on this. You can do the same kind of research that those restaurants do. An interesting, there's a very famous burrito concept chain out there. I think you know who I'm talking about, but there was a small town that really, really wanted to have that restaurant, a chain, but they wouldn't allow a franchise or a restaurant to open up because they knew they would lose money. There just wasn't enough concentration of the folks that would regularly spend money at their restaurant, because they've run hundreds and thousands of them around. And they have that experience. They've got that formula down. They know. So they've measured it and analyzed it. And I guarantee you, if that community, they knew that they would be successful and profitable there would be one there. So again, all those things that the big restaurants do, you also have access through organizations like Macon Public Library, like local, whether it's chambers of commerce or economic development groups or small business development centers. They can all help you do the same thing, even though you've just got the one location that you're opening up right now. All right, let's talk about your concept. So another conversation that I will have with our restaurants is I will ask them about their key value proposition, because a lot of times folks really start to fall in love with their food, and they will tell me, well, I've got the best food in town and that's all that matters. And that is wrong, because that is not all that matters. There are plenty of restaurants that have had exceptional food that I've gone there and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am going to come back to this place all the time. And then a month later, it's gone. Because, there was not enough of people like me who were excited about that cuisine, excited about that concept to make that, function, to make it profitable. There are plenty of restaurants that have absolutely okay food. Perfectly okay. But, their key value proposition is that it's consistent, it's fast, it's convenient, you know what you're getting every single time, and sometimes that is what people have a hankering for. They don't want the best burger in all the town, the juiciest, most exquisite with, artisanal ingredients. Sometimes you just want something to satiate you, that you know is going to be good, but fast and convenient. Sometimes you go to a place because the the atmosphere is going to be great. You enjoy the servers. The location around there is something that gets people excited. So really digging into why do people come here, and again thinking back to I've got the best burger in town. Here's the other thing. That's really for what is the best burger is subjective. It's not the same to everybody. So you need to have the best burger according to enough people to justify that. So you really need to build that concept to convince them to try your burger and decide that, yes, to me, this is the best burger and I'm coming back to this place. But you need to be thinking across the whole business plan, not just, gotta have food. That's a given. But is it that the atmosphere is going to attract folks, that they just really love the decor and the seating and that it is an experience? Service is fantastic. They can get some fun drinks. Is it fast casual? Maybe it's just, they want convenience. Maybe you're thinking, maybe it's a ghost kitchen concept, that we're not even going to have a dining space because that's not what our customers want. They just want my awesome burger and really fast. So thinking through that whole experience of why, or maybe it's a family-centered a restaurant. So you really need to make sure that you've got menu items, that you've got a space that's conducive to a family coming in and enjoying, they need to get out of the house and they're going out to dinner. So we're thinking with our customer brains now. It's not just about, I've got really good food. It's about what are all the reasons why somebody would come to my restaurant. What are they thinking? Because here's the deal. Everybody's already got a list of restaurants that they know and like in their head. They've got the presets. So you need to break the chain. You need to have a value proposition that is unique, that it's not, hey, we're another burger place and you should try us. I already have a burger place. And maybe your burger is significantly better than other burger, but I don't know. I already know, and I like this one, and this is the burger place I've been going to for 10 years. So you really got to think about what makes me different, what makes this concept different, what's going to attract people who are already going to restaurants, who already know and like these restaurants, to change course and then become, regulars, and to decide to kind of break that chain and be your customers. So think through the whole business plan on what are all those considerations on what your customer wants. So thinking through, why are they spending money there? What's unique? How do you communicate that? So when you do decide, I'm going to go the ghost kitchen concept. So I need to go out there. People aren't coming, necessary to come and sit. And how are you marketing online to make sure that folks are able to connect through whatever service you might be using or connecting to your website? How do you say this is a awesome, fast, delivered right to your door? We use special packaging that makes sure that the fries stay crispy. Oh my gosh, that would sell me. Having, those ordering services. I don't know if anybody's gotten it just right. That would be a huge one. So thinking through how you are communicating these points to get people into the door or ordering online in the first place. All right, just double checking, making sure. Like I said, if you've got any questions, throw them in the comments. Happy to answer those. All right, where to set up shop. A lot of times, I'll have folks that just fall in love with a particular location, like a building. They're just like, that building looks cool. That building would be perfect. I think I can set it up this way. But we really need to take a step back. Before we start falling in love with particular locations, we need to ask, does this physical location meet the demands of the business? I've got one example from this particular class that I taught. This was years ago. I was talking about needing, fume hoods for particular pieces of equipment, and grease trap, typically, like, can you, actually put those into the building? And I had one person in the class just kind of looking really concerned. I didn't know if they got like a phone call or something, but they were just looking incredibly concerned. I talked with them after the class, and they had admitted that they had signed a 3-year lease to a location that will not allow them, any particular, improvements to the ventilation, including a fume hood. Well, that limits what kind of equipment you can have in that space tremendously, but they didn't think that far through. They just liked the location. They liked the building. I think it was a historic building, so that's probably why they didn't want people tearing up through there to get a hood into the space. But that's what's going to be most important. Does it meet the physical demands of what your business is going to do? Are you located close to your target market? Like I was telling you with that example of these large chains, know exactly. They need to have a population density of so many folks of particular demographics within a certain drive radius of their location to know that they'll have enough regular business to successfully turn a profit. So that's going to be important. Again, this is one of those things. It's not about you as the business owner. It's not because it is close to your house and you would like to have a short commute. It has everything to do with the people who are spending money at your restaurant. And have you done the research to verify that? You can take all sorts of, guesses on, I think that there's enough people here. There's no reason. You've got access to those demographic resources. For free. Please utilize those to determine and verify and ensure that you're setting yourself up for success. And here's when we're talking about location, you always hear, there's good locations, there's bad locations, and this is one in the restaurant industry in particular. I will get questions every once in a while about haunted locations that are cursed, that 5 different restaurants moved into that space and they all closed down. I don't subscribe to the cursed location. I believe that every location has pros and cons. Like if you go out and you get a restaurant location on the plaza, that is an awesome location as far as organic traffic, and you've got tourists, and you've got all sorts of opportunities on the plaza. It's gonna be really expensive. So you have to have a business model that is tailored to that location. So pros, cons. You could also find a very affordable location that's way out of the way. But then you need to be thinking about strategies to convince people you should go out this way. Probably the ghost kitchen concept doesn't make sense in that scenario when it's way out there. You need to be an experience. You need to be a location that people are like, I'm going out of my way, and I'm going to make sure that we're going to set this evening to go to this really cool place because they've got this kind of entertainment, and the ambiance is just fantastic. So you really need to be thinking about what are the pros, what are the cons, and then, what are the strategies that you will use to overcome those. Maybe you do need to, make sure that off the highway you've got that billboard that says, we are on this exit. Or maybe you really need to, allocate some funds to having a really strong, online presence to make sure that you're connecting, because your customers are checking everything out on Google. They're just going on there, and first thing they're going to do before they make that decision is check your rating there. So just making sure that you're convincing people to leave reviews and to make sure that you've got all those stars to convince new customers. So thinking about those from a strategic point of view. But at any location, it's going to have some pros, some cons. I don't think that there exists the perfect location that has no downsides to it. So just being honest about those. Knowing that, hey, this is an expensive place to be. So we really need to make sure day one, we've got regular customers coming in here to be able to turn a profit. All right. And then early on in the process, you want to talk with the municipality or the jurisdiction that's going to be over. So whether that's the county or the city, you want to start having that conversation before you commit to a location where they say, wow, for here, maybe, there's not enough parking. You will have to add a parking lot. Or maybe they'll say, you will need to have a grease trap of this size for this operation, and you're going to have to tear out all the concrete floors. Like, they can help you go through some of that early planning considerations. So making sure that you're connecting early on before you commit to that location, before you sign that 3-year or buy that property, that again, you can make that location meet the demands of your business. All right, let's talk about the menu. This is like one of the most fun parts. And I'm going to unfortunately make it a little less fun because we're going to talk about the business, not the artistic and fun and creative part of menu planning. That's the part that I like to be a part of. I like trying the different food items. But we have to make sure that that menu makes business sense. The first thing, and this has surprised me working with a number of restaurants that are in operation, I will ask, why is this menu item priced like this? And they're like, that sounded about right. Or I looked at some of the competition. That's a very common one where I looked, this spaghetti costs $10 at all the surrounding places that offer spaghetti, so I'm going to charge $10. You need to start your pricing understanding your costs, because maybe you are putting a more premium item than your competition into that spaghetti. That is local beef and those meatballs, or this is a better heirloom tomato sauce. You need to understand not only what your competition is charging. That is important. You want to be within a reasonable range of what customer expectations are going to be, but it really needs to be also informed by what your cost is. It really analyzing. And a lot of times now, food distributors will have a person on staff that helps you specifically with that, because, well, they want you to buy their, the food from them. So they want to make sure that they are helpful and that you stay in business, because once they got your business, they need to make sure that your restaurant keeps going and is profitable so you can keep buying food from them. So they are really helpful, actually. Sometimes people don't think about that. So connecting early on with food distributors, because they've got that awesome resource to help you on that pricing and menu development. Another thing that gets overlooked is food waste. Folks don't factor that cost in. And it's inevitable at some capacity that you are just not going to go through the full case of eggplant one week, but you want to limit that. So taking on strategies like, okay, we're going to make sure that eggplant is on the menu in a couple places. If we need to have this eggplant, we want to make sure that we're using it in this appetizer and this meal, and we can be versatile with all the different menu items, that if one menu item isn't selling really well at a certain point, we're still using those ingredients at some capacity, or we've got options to then say, we're going to, the soup of the day is going to incorporate eggplants, so we can make sure to utilize them. So we're not just throwing them out, because that can be really costly. And that's a cost that a lot of times restaurant operators don't think about or calculate when they're just throwing away things that go bad. And also thinking about, how difficult is it going to be on your staff to time all these tickets? So if you've got stuff that's just, going into the fryer and it's done versus you're like baking pork belly that's going to take 30 to 40 minutes, just thinking through what is that process going to look like of you or your staff, the chefs, moving around, preparing those items. How difficult are you making your lives with the different items that need to be prepared and get to the customer's table all at the same time? All right. So all this feeds into, making the money work. So this is where we have our first handout. So if you did not get the handouts, if you're joining us, please put it in the message in the chat here, and we can connect with you and get you those handouts. But the first one is a spreadsheet, and it just goes over very generally some financial considerations for starting up a restaurant. So I've got on this sheet the national, and keep in mind this is, I believe, 2019 numbers, so it has shifted just recently a bit, but it goes over the national averages on costs to start up a restaurant and national averages and percents of operational costs to running a restaurant. So it just kind of gives you, and the purpose of this, just to give you an idea of what ballpark should be in your mind on what it will cost to start up a restaurant. So I have the national average, and I also have an actual example of a small restaurant operation here in the Kansas City metro. They were kind enough to share some ballpark figures on what it costs them to get started up and kind of what they pay on a monthly basis for operations. So again, it kind of gives you that real world example of maybe a smaller operation where a lot of the businesses that I work with are starting up at, also compared to that national average. One item on the financials that I have to call attention to, that sometimes shocks folks who have not, managed a restaurant and the financials before, is that the honest truth, and one of the very difficult aspects of the restaurant industry, is that it exists on teeny tiny profit margins. The average profit margin of any given restaurant in the U.S. is less than 5%, which is really small, and it is incredibly easy for that profit margin, that some, mistake or some, overlook on operations. Maybe it's just food waste. You could eat through that 5% profit margin just in food waste or not managing labor costs appropriately. And keep in mind too, this is factoring in that the manager that you would probably be working in the restaurant, so you would be paying yourself a salary. This is factoring that in, but at the end of the day, you've paid all the bills and hopefully yourself. You're still looking at an industry that has a 5% profit margin. And I say this not to scare folks, but to say, and there's plenty of restaurants, successful restaurants that's just the truth for them. But what it means is that you have to be on top of the numbers. You cannot wing it, because what you don't want at the end of the year is to look back and you're like, wait a second, I thought I was doing really well, and my bank account is negative. I've seen it, and it's because food waste wasn't accounted, or some other seemingly small item was overlooked, and And that meant that they were losing money for that year. So if this is not something that is your core strength, is, you know, the financials and budgeting, and I highly encourage you to seek some help. You probably, you know, having a good CPA, there are services that are kind of like a contract CFO that, you know, not only they're helping with the books, doing taxes, they might also be advising you on, hey, your food costs are going up. We advise that let's look into this and figure out maybe how we can adjust this. But you're making those calls, you know, ahead of time, that you're seeing these problems that, or things that may be problems before they're problems. That's the best time to find problems before, so you can make adjustments. So definitely be connecting with resources. Maybe it's a service provider, or maybe it's through another resource like the Small Business Development Center or SCORE, or a number of different organizations that exist specifically to help small businesses with their business planning. So you really need to pre-plan and know details of what it's going to cost to get started up, and figure out what it's going to cost on a monthly basis, and figuring out what can you use, what data could you use to reasonably predict your income. Because unless you are operating as a pop-up or a food truck, or you're operating already, you don't have that historical data. And you don't want to just guess, because you need to have a reasonable anticipation of what your revenue is going to be, so your costs are matched to that. You don't want to be spending the money on the really expensive decorations or the super high-end oven if the location and the business model and the size of the seating area is just not going to mathematically work to be able to cover those costs and turn a profit. So using that demographic information, we had been talking about earlier, connecting with another restaurant who might allow you to work there and learn from them. Maybe if they're willing to share some of that data and information and use their real world expertise, there are resources. So please connect with those resources, so you're not just straight up gambling. That's not what you want to do as an entrepreneur. You are making educated guesses. So you need to get that education to make an educated guess, or an educated calculation, I should say, and not just a flat out guess and a gamble based on no data. It can work out. It's happened. There's plenty of folks that I've talked to that's exactly what happened, but they lucked out. I didn't get a chance to talk to the other majority of folks who went with that strategy and they don't have a business now. So again, a lot of these resources, a lot of these opportunities are free. Working with another restaurant owner actually pays you to get that experience. So I highly encourage folks, get that education if you don't already have it, to make the best decisions to ensure that your business is successful. Can't be too detailed here. Oh, another tough question. I alluded to this earlier in the program. Where are the funds coming from? Because, that is an excellent question. What is the KC Metro profit margin for restaurants? I will have to do some digging on that. I do not know. But now that you've asked it, I need to know. So I'll have to figure out if there is an organization that collects that data at the KC level and is able to share that. Making a note figure out if I can find KC average profit margin. And then I will, once I get that, I will incorporate that into future programs. So thank you very much for that question. And that is one that I will work on. But as far as the money to get started, like I had said, if it's a startup food business, if you have not been operating maybe as a caterer or food truck previously for a number of years, the chances of getting a business loan are very slim. So figuring out what kind of savings that you are able to put in, kind of the friends and family, funding option, or bootstrapping it, doing pop-ups, starting at a smaller scale and building up to eventually getting the final restaurant location. Let's talk a little bit about the legal stuff. If you haven't run a business before, any business, you're going to set up an entity. You'll have some options on what type of business entity in the state that you are operating in. So make sure that you are consulting with, an organization, whether it's a business mentor. Sometimes, like I know here in Kansas City, the local law school through UMKC has services to help businesses with this, to figure out what entity type is going to make the most sense for your legal and tax considerations. You're going to get state level and federal level tax IDs, and then the local permits are where it starts to get a little bit tricky. And this is why I had said earlier on in the planning process, making sure that you're communicating with, if it's the county or the city or the local jurisdictions that are going to be over you in your particular location that you're considering, so you can figure out what kind of zoning considerations, construction, if you're going to need an architect, if there's permits for signs, outdoor seating, parking, all of those things. You want to know that ahead of time. You don't want surprises. So if you're building, a deck out onto the restaurant to have some extra outdoor seating, making sure that you don't get a fine from your local city, like, hey, you needed a permit to get that. Either way, you're paying it. You might as well pay the smaller amount for the permit as opposed to the fine, and make sure that you're all good for that deck construction. And then, talking with your local health department, talking with your local fire department, and just making sure that and a lot of this, if you are doing some major construction renovation, very likely you're going to need an architect. So working with an architect that knows, they'll know those codes, and they'll know that information to be able to help you to design and make sure the sinks are going in the right places and you got the right hood clearances and all those details. Absolutely rely on the experts there to help you out, who do that on a regular basis. And there's special permits too. Liquor permits are quite a thing for restaurants. A lot of times folks are just paying an attorney that specializes in that to get those permits, to apply for and go through the process of getting those. So if that's something, and it takes a while, so you want to get on that early on. And a lot of times it makes sense to contract that out to somebody that does that on a regular basis. Food products. So you are, jarring that awesome barbecue sauce and you are selling it to customers on their way out. That's an awesome idea, but it's a different process. I actually have a whole class on food products, also through Mid-Continent, that I teach. So if that's a consideration, I would love to have you for that class as well. Sometimes, for different events that you're doing, maybe noise permits, there may be some other items. So making sure that you're well connected to the local city or county, that you're having those conversations early on, to make sure that there's no surprises, that you don't get in trouble, you don't get a permit, you get potentially closed down. I have seen that happen as well. Just depending on the severity of what thing got overlooked, it's not worth it. That's another gamble. We don't want to gamble. We're making, profitable business decisions. So making sure that you're knowing ahead of time what kind of permits, what kind of things that you need to do. And insurance. It's going to be a requirement. You'll have to have general liability. You'll very likely, be required to have workers' comp. And then there's other, you might have, probably have insurance on the property. If you own that, you might have insurance on, if the power goes out and you lose all your food. You might have you might have a number of different types of insurance or a policy that is developed specifically. So here's what I'll say on insurance. It's going to make this so much easier for you. I recommend that you work with an agent who works with restaurants, because they are going to know all of the things to put together in that policy. Heaven forbid you have to make a claim. The process is going to be so much easier because they've gone through these processes before. So, almost any insurance agent can get you a policy for, general liability insurance for a business. So you could go through the person that you get your home and auto through. I don't recommend that. Unless that person is familiar with small business and ideally restaurant, working with those types of businesses. And they can help go through and make some recommendations of, this is what you're going to have. This is probably what's going to make sense to have. And this is probably something that you don't really need because you're not, this doesn't, one that came up actually recently was cybersecurity insurance. And that really it depends. So in the particular case, I recommended that business talk with their insurance agent and kind of figure out, and they kind of determined, based on their business operations, that wasn't necessarily something that they were going to need right now. But you want to have somebody that's got that experience to give you that educated information. All right, that's all things. We are ready to open, right? And this is where all of the planning ahead helps. Because as you are going, and I've got a couple restaurants right now going through the opening process. And I will tell you, I don't think I have any example of any of the restaurants that I've worked with that have told me the first date that they told me that they're going to open. So if they said, I'm going to open up on April 12th, it is never April 12th. It is more like June, July, August. There's always other things that either don't get calculated or that come up. Or, right now, the restaurants I'm working with, of course, are dealing with supply chain issues. So, hey, that oven is not going to get here for another 6 months. It's on a container ship somewhere. So all this is to say, you need to be prepared for extra costs, and you need to be prepared for the extra time that is likely going to take based off of your initial estimation of things. You're like, all right, I think I get open by April. Make sure that you are financially able to extend that if it takes longer. So this is, again, where the planning helps out, that you're not going to need to add a grease trap, that that you've got a path to add the hood system into that building, or whatever all these things are, that that you've already applied for that permit for that deck, so you are good to go. You don't have to go through the whole process and have that part slowed down. But during this process, it is very, very likely that it will take longer. So just be prepared as you are getting the place together and built and equipped. Have yourself emotionally and financially prepared. let's talk about your suppliers. So just identifying, and we talked about a lot of times your distributors will help you with other things. So maybe you're already talking with them about helping to develop your menu, helping with pricing, but identifying who your options are, who's got the stuff that you're going to be ordering. We had talked a little bit too about the financials. If this is not something that is in your wheelhouse, if this is not your expertise, it is going to be important to have somebody that helps with the bookkeeping, with taxes, with financial maybe advice, and understanding that those are different things. Sometimes there is a financial organization that will do all. They'll do the bookkeeping. They'll do your taxes. They'll be kind of a contract CFO. Sometimes there are folks that just do bookkeeping. You want to make sure in the conversation early on that you say, I need you to do these things, and you need to make sure that they also do taxes, or maybe they have a resource for taxes, or that they do the bookkeeping. So making sure that you've communicated that with that service provider on what you need. Who's helping with the tech? Making sure that your website, especially if you are doing, online orders, making sure that you've got a service, because it probably does not make sense that you've got somebody on staff that just does technology. So what makes sense a lot of times is if you've got a contract service that can help you with those. So if there is a tech issue, especially if you're that ghost kitchen option that you've got either limited or no dining room, that your orders are coming in on that website. So that is, very essential to you making money every day. So making sure that you have somebody that you can call when the orders aren't coming through. People can't get, that you've got a resource already lined up. You don't want to be trying to get that set up the day when the website's being wonky. Figuring out, who's helping with the, who you're getting your furniture and booths put together, where are you getting your equipment from? And we were talking about, the time frame on getting a lot of equipment now, and who's helping with different legal things. Like I said, one of the first steps is setting up that entity. So you want to have the expert to help you with that. If you are getting into business with a partner, something really critical at the very beginning is having an operating agreement in place. So that is also something that having legal assistance is going to be very helpful for. All right, we're shifting gears a little bit into marketing. This is where the next handouts come into play. You'll see that we've got a sheet that says it's marketing for your restaurant. Looks a little bit like this. So this is something that I hear regularly where I ask our businesses, hey, what is your marketing plan? And they will tell me something along the lines of, well, I got my Facebook set up, and I've got an Instagram, and I've got some great photos of my food up, and I am ready to go. That is my marketing plan. That is not a marketing plan. Social media is a fantastic tool to help your marketing plan. In many, many cases, it will make absolute sense to invest some time, maybe money, into making sure that you've got a good social media presence. But it is not the full picture of what your marketing plan is. So let's start high level. First thing is you want to be thinking about your brand. Your brand absolutely consists of a lot of the things that you would think of: your logo, the design of the restaurant, what your website looks like. But you also need to be thinking about your brand as what people say about you when you are not in the room, because you will be getting customers, ideally, as you have people come in. They try your food. They're like, this place is awesome. I want to go tell my friends and family that this place is awesome. be thinking about that is a really critical component of your brand. So making sure that you're thinking strategically about not only your physical assets like your logo in the restaurant design, that's kind of like the face. First impressions, very important. So that is a very important component of your business, but your brand is really the personality of your restaurant. So what are people saying about it? Like, oh, the place is fantastic. The servers are a little bit rude, but in a charming kind of way. This part's good, this part's bad. Be thinking about all those things. And as you are following on, if there's, if it's Google or Yelp or review sites, you'll kind of get an essence of that personality, but really be thinking about your brand, not just as the physical assets of the logo that you put together, the things that you are in direct control over, but also what do you want people to say about your business when you're not around, and thinking strategically about developing the personality. Think about your restaurant like it is a human, like it's a personification of the business. How does it present itself? How does it communicate with folks? Because when you're on social media, when you're on Facebook, you want to be talking like the restaurant, not necessarily like you. But think about, my restaurant's more edgy, or my restaurant is more like a little old grandma who's super sweet. And be thinking about that way. If we really dig into like the psychology of branding, the interesting thing is humans don't have a dedicated part of their brain to process abstract things like a business. We actually repurpose the part of our brain that engages with other people. So in a really deep brain kind of way, when you're thinking about brands that you like, you're thinking of a personification of that brand, who does that really explicitly. Great example, Coca-Cola, when they put they'll put actual people's names on the bottles there as one of the marketing campaigns. And you do, when you see your friend's name and you take a picture of that bottle and you're like, Josh, look, you're on the bottle. And they're making that explicit connection to Coca-Cola is about friendship. And you like your friend Josh. He's an awesome guy. And you also like Coca-Cola. And now we're making you think about your friend Josh. So that's a very explicit way that the company would connect those. But for you, for a small business, thinking about that as part of your communications strategy, possibly also part of your employee training. That, hey, we are a folksy, down-home establishment. We want to make sure that we are incorporating that into how we, or maybe we're that edgy establishment. That informs a lot of your marketing, branding, communication decisions. So be thinking about that and think about it strategically. All right. Now we're going to be building what that overall marketing strategy is going to be, because we've gathered information on, we know who's going to be the most likely to get excited about our concept, who's going to be the most likely customers coming through our door. We've got a lot of information about them. Let's build a strategy to communicate with them. And the way I like to, and if you look on the other side of that marketing handout, I've got a little guide that is essentially, the way I like to think about it is your marketing campaigns are like a science experiment. So if you go back to middle school biology, chemistry, science class, you're kind of going through the same scientific process of, you've got your hypothesis. So in this instance for the business, you've got a specific, goal in mind. So I think if I do these things, I will get this result. So if I start offering live entertainment and I start advertising that on Instagram and I tell people that this is the place to have an awesome experience and great food, if I launch this campaign, I'm going to get, and you want to pick something measurable. that you have the ability to measure to determine. So I'm going to get 20% more new customers. That's what I want. I've got a lot of great regulars, but I want to bump that up. So I want to get new customers with this campaign. Or I want to, get, more, I want my regular customers to come back more. So I think if I institute a loyalty program that if they get, so many meals, or if they try so many different things, or, I'll get the folks that already are here and like us to come back even more. So you're setting up this hypothesis, and you're making sure that you've got a measurable goal in mind. So you can go back and determine, did this marketing campaign get me a return on my investment? And that's what's going to be really important. And of course, you dig into what are the overall strategies and tactics? Like, what are the daily things that you're doing as part of that loyalty program? What are the messages that you are communicating on your social media platforms to drive this campaign? What are the things that you are instructing your servers and the hostess to make sure that we are having this cohesive marketing strategy? And you have a way of going back and measuring. I did get 20 new customers. So how do you know? There's different ways. So, daily, maybe you're just asking folks like, hey, make sure when folks come in, you ask them, hey, was this your first time here? So whatever it is that you're doing, that you can measure that way at the end of that campaign or at a certain interval, you can go back and say, this was successful. This was awesome. Maybe we incorporate this to a regular marketing schedule. Maybe we do this campaign again next year. Or maybe it didn't work. And that's okay. You tried something, you know that it wasn't successful. Now let's not try that. Let's not do that one again. Let's try something new. But so often I will see businesses that kind of do throw the spaghetti at the wall. And they're like, I'm going to do this and I'm going to run these advertisements and I got a billboard and we're going to have trivia night and we're going to do all these things. But without a way to measure, hey, was that particularly successful? Did this work versus this? Or maybe, you did have an overall increase in sales or customers, but you don't know which of those things did it. So maybe the other things are just not worth the time or energy. It was really just one component that was really driving. So making sure that you've got that review measurement step built into your marketing strategy is just going to make sure that you're not wasting time, energy, money on things that are not driving sales. All right, let's talk about the systems as you are operating in the kitchen. We had talked about that you have a very small profit margin. So this is another area that you want to make sure that you've got all these systems in place, that folks are being trained on them appropriately. And that's going to help you maintain your profitability and maintain that the place is operating smoothly and that the customer experience is fantastic. Because again, you can have the best food, but if things are falling apart in the kitchen, if things are moving slowly, if folks don't know what they're needing to do, or we don't have quality or inventory checks or all these other operational things in place, it doesn't matter that, they had the best burger of their life, but it took an hour and a half to get it. And maybe they didn't get it right the first time. Like, those are going to be the things that customer remembers, even if they had the best food in the world. So you really need to make sure that we've got these systems. And this is something too, like I was saying, that you can learn from working with other restaurants. So if this is not something that you've got a lot of familiarity with, make sure that you are going out there, working with a restaurant, and ideally there's an owner who's willing to go over what their systems are, so you can replicate what works. But just this is not a comprehensive list, but just things to be thinking about. Skipped back there. but thinking about, how are you managing your inventory, and making sure that there's a system in place where somebody tells the manager, hey, we are at 20% on beef. We need to make sure that we get this ordered and we get enough ordered for the next round. We need to make sure that we're checking food quality. This is an interesting one that I've seen with larger operations, like maybe they're opening up a new location and you don't have the same manager, making sure that corners aren't being cut on the food preparation. And I've seen where restaurants where I'm like, this food is fantastic. And then a year later, I'm like, it's the same menu item, but it's not as fantastic. Something has changed. And if you're not checking that quality, if you're not saying, hey, chef, can you make me a X, Y, and Z so I can, try it? Make sure that it's still coming out the way that I had, developed this recipe. You may not know. And safety considerations. Oh my goodness. I saw, here's an example. If you're not training your servers and cooks on all the safety considerations that they need to think about, you may not catch things like I saw in a restaurant, somebody was, one, they were doing it wrong. They were scooping the glasses right into the ice machine. Nope, wrong, violation. But the reason too, one of the reasons, they broke that glass. They broke that glass in the ice machine and they're picking it out. It was a new, and it was a server, so front of house person who just wasn't trained on this. And we're like, no. That is a huge, danger that you have those glass shards in the ice and not able to see them. Like, you need to burn that you need to clean completely out that machine. So it's a very little thing that can happen, and that you're, managing the back of the house, or you're in the host position, or you're somewhere else. You need to make sure that everybody is trained appropriately. And what are those systems? Who's doing the training? How are you ensuring that folks have all that information? Tracking sales. And tracking, what you are needing for staffing and labor. Again, those are, if you're overstaffing yourself, very easy to eat into that small profit margin. So here's the thing. You've put all this time and money and effort into your dream that you want to build. And the crazy thing is that eventually it will not be in your hands. It will be in the hands of all of the folks that you've employed, that you have trained, that they have trained. So you want to ensure, and now more than ever, it was already tough to find good folks to work in restaurants, and it is just insane right now. So you have to think strategically about how you will find good folks. I recommend it. It's tempting, start. You're like, hey, if your brother or your friend or somebody, in my experience, it doesn't work out super well. Your friends aren't used to taking orders from you. They're like, yeah, sure. It's just not an ideal situation to start with. You want to make sure that you've got good, solid employees. So you got to figure out how you're going to find them, how you're going to attract them, and how will you keep them. There for a while, there were certain, restaurants and establishments that just they were just always hiring. It's kind of crazy. Just always. The sign didn't go away, and they're just turning over folks. That does get expensive, because if you think about it, you've got folks who are doing the training, so they're working at less productivity. The folks that you've hired are less productive because they're just learning. So, you're losing productivity from 2 staff folks for that, position. And if you've got that just constantly, you're spending a lot more money on humans than if you had somebody that was trained and you just maintained them in your employment. And why is it a good place to work? And I would tell people before, like, you want to make sure that your employees are happy. That means happy customers. But the truth is, right now, it's just so competitive for folks. So you really have to think about, why is my restaurant the place to work? Why do people want to stay there? And I've seen some of our new restaurants get really creative with making sure that they've got, benefits that typically aren't but they just incorporate it into their financial model. They're like, we're gonna have to charge, a little bit more, but what we can do is then maintain that we've got really good staff and we can pay for these benefits. Or we can figure out really creative things with, like, making sure that we've got transportation, that employees, if they don't have a car, how do they get to the restaurant? We can open up to folks that maybe working at other restaurants isn't an option, but we've got, this great transportation benefit, or funds available. Now's the time to really be thinking strategically and creatively about how you are going to maintain your employees. Again, because everything that you've built, it is going to be in their hands. So that is the final topic of the evening. We have some time that if we've got more questions, and I am going to dig in and see if somebody has the average restaurant profit margin specifically for Kansas City. And then I think Hannah was saying, Jason Rule from Corner Cafe said that his cinnamon roll recipe has to be so good and his training has to be so thorough that even when his employees only make it 90% correct, it's still the best cinnamon rolls that his customers have had. So that is, I love, again, it's not just about having that best cinnamon roll, having that best recipe. A lot of it's about the process and the training and then getting it to that customer. So you're thinking about the whole chain of events between getting your ingredients and doing a quality check on those ingredients, making sure that it's all coming in the right temperature, the right quality, all the way to the server getting it there on time, that it's coming to them at the right temperature, and it's looking and smelling and, of course, tasting exactly how you want it to. All right. I am not seeing any more questions, I don't think, but Hannah, correct me if I am wrong or if I'm missing anything. But you've got my contact information, so please. And one resource I didn't specifically call out yet, Casey SourceLink aggregates all of the local Kansas City area business resources. So it is a fantastic place to start for our folks that are outside of the Kansas City metro area. There is a Missouri SourceLink, so you can connect with them. Again, they aggregate all of those business resources. So a lot of the ones that I mentioned, like Mid-Continent Public Library, like the Small Business Development Center, like the Chambers of Commerce, it's a great place to have those all in one place to see who's there, who can help. And Hannah, you great point. Please do fill out this survey. This is what enables the library to put on these programs for the low price of free. So please take, and this is the information that I use to make changes to these programs, to provide information. So please do let me know any suggestions or other topics that we can make this an even better program for folks.
You said everything I needed to say.
We've done this enough, Hannah. I'm sorry I took your spotlight.
I'm never mad about it. But yeah, I mean, like Xander said, if you guys could fill that survey out, it makes more of a difference than you could probably know. We're not able to put on classes like this without feedback from the community, and that comes through that survey. And also, we are grant funded, and I don't know if you guys know anything about grants, but they like numbers. So those surveys are pretty important for us to be able to keep that grant. So if you guys could do that for me, that would be great. My dog is really wanting some attention. So yay. Yeah, we've reached the part of the night where we are just very needy.
Oh, totally understand. This is why I am in my office right now and not at home. My dog would be doing the same thing.
I can't imagine. It's definitely not a distraction at all.
All right, everyone, I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you think of any questions later on, still please do contact us. And good luck. I look forward to visiting some of these restaurants as they open. So have a fantastic evening, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.